Hey crocheters, so this video we're going to really start adding the personality into our baby sheep. So this is our Christmas in July tutorial, and today we're going to be making the eyes, sewing them on, shaping the head, sewing on the nose, making the ears, and sewing those on. It's kind of a lot, but at the same time, kind of a little. Mostly, we're going to just get so much more personality. We're going to take the head shape from like being faintly reminiscent of a sheep to really starting to look like a sheep and have some characteristics and cuteness. All right, so now we're going to start on the eyes. And so we're zoomed in here a little bit on my hands because we're using the 3.5mm hook and our black medium weight yarn. And we're going to get started on the eyes. So row 1, we're going to magic ring, and then we'll single crochet 7. So here's the magic ring. Then we'll work our 7 single crochets into the loop. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we're going to take the yarn end and pull it tight, forming a circle. And then we're going to start on row 2, which is increase 7. So this first one is a little difficult sometimes. Take some persuasion. Alright, so that's our first one. Alright, second half of the increase. There we go. So that's our first full increase. The increase 2. Then increase 7. So that brings us to the end. We're going to cut a 10-inch or so yarn tail and knot that off. Well, let's be honest, I should have slip stitched into the next stitch, but I got excited. So I'm just going to pull this through here, kind of finish off the circle a little better. So essentially what we've created is just a large, well, we've made a big black circle. And so what we're going to do next will be add the highlights. So for that, we're going to take 6 inches of white medium weight yarn, and we're going to thread it onto our yarn needle. And we're going to work from the back side. We're going to work in the top of the first row, bottom of the second row, kind of the same thing. And we'll just pull the needle through, leaving 1.5 inches kind of on the back side. Then we're going to go over 2 stitches, then insert it and push it to the back. Working from the back side again, we're going to go over 1 stitch, push it to the front, and then we will go back down 1 stitch and pull to the back. And so that's how we create our little highlights, which really add a lot of character to the project. So when you pull off your yarn needle, you're going to take the ends in the back and just knot them together. You want to do the first one kind of lightly so that you don't kind of alter the shape of the eye. But then the second one can be nice and secure. So what you're going to do is you're going to make another eye. So you're going to mirror the highlights in the other eye. So you're going to do them like in the exact opposite direction. So they're mirror images of each other. All right, so now we're ready to sew the eyes onto the head, and we're going to place them just right kind of below the bangs. And so for this, you're going to need your fabric pins. And there's kind of this place, right below the bang line that is really natural for the eyes to sit. So you're just going to pin the eye into place there. And the other side is we're going to place it the exact same way. So for now, I'm just going to pin this one into place and sew it on, and then I'll show you the next one. So you're going to take your long yarn tail and you're going to thread it onto your needle. And then what you're going to do is you're going to work under a stitch in the head really close to the eye. And honestly, for this one, this very first one, I'm going to go almost just right underneath that edge, working in the head. And I've got this yarn tail here, which I don't want sticking out, so I'm just going to tuck it behind the eye, which will help give some three-dimensionality to the eye. All right, replace that pin. All right, so I just went under that stitch in the head, so now I'm going to go up through one of the outside stitches in the eye. Then going over one stitch, I'm going to go down through the next one, and then into a stitch in the head again. And so this is how I'm going to work around the entire eyes, going up through a stitch in the outside row of the eye, then down through the next stitch, and then into, or underneath a stitch in the head. So I'm going to, as I work on this, rotate the project rather than try and rotate myself. So it's going to spin a little bit here as we work our way around. All right, so when you get to the spot where it's natural to add eyelashes, if you want to do that, what you're going to do is just work your needle farther away, because right now we've been working really close to the eye. And so to make eyelashes, you're just going to work farther into the head than we have been so far to attach the next couple stitches. And then you would continue sewing around like normal. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of fiber fill behind the eye. So I tucked that, the yarn tail behind there, which gives some three-dimensionality. But to add to that, we're going to put some fiber fill, or you could use yarn scraps. Those work really well also. And we're just going to push it right up in here so we can, so we can finish sewing around. And the eye will have a 3D shape, similar to a safety eye, but it will actually be sewn on. All right, so here we are. We're just right about at the beginning, and so I'm going to knot it off. And you can, I don't know if there's like a proper method for knots. Anything you can do to secure it and make the knot as small as possible. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bury it into the project. I'll give it a nice tug to help kind of pull that knot in, remove the needle, and then using a smaller hook, you're just going to weave it into the project. And that's how we're going to do our eyes. So we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Right, and now we've got both of them on, so that's what it looks like. So the very next thing we're going to do is shape the head. So for that, you're going to take about 12 inches of white yarn and thread it onto your yarn needle. And once again, you're not going to knot it, but we're going to insert it right at the corner of the eye, and we're going to push it to the other side. So it takes a little bit of finessing to get it right into the corner of, of that other eye. And to be totally honest, right now, it's pretty hot in my studio, so I can't quite grip the needle very well. So I'm going to use some jewelry pliers. There we go. Usually I can do it just fine, but it is hot and sweaty in here. All right, so you're going to pull it so it's about equal distance on both sides, and you're going to go down half a stitch. So there's just a tiny bit of, a stitch in between the two. And then you're going to push it to the middle of the head. So I think we're going to be in about the 7th or 8th row of the head. You're going to push it through. Once again, going to use my jewelry pliers. All right, and you can see already that just doing that has started to take that eye and dimple it in a little bit, which is the effect that we're going for. So we'll thread the yarn needle on the other side. And then we're going to do the same thing where we're going to go down about half a stitch, just working really, really close to the eye. And we're going to go, you want to have a half a stitch between the two yarn ends. And so it can be kind of difficult to get them exactly perfectly where you want them in the beginning. And so, I'll pull this off, and you can see I've got a whole stitch in between these two yarn ends, and that is too much in my opinion. So I'm going to just take this end and bring it over half stitch. So we're just going to bring that over half stitch, and that looks better. All right, so what we're going to do now to shape the head is, the purpose of shaping the head is to kind of give that, give the eyes a little bit more life. So to do that, we're going to take our yarn ends and just lightly knot. And then you're going to pull. All right, one of them doesn't want to go. There we go. All right, so you pull, and you can see what it does is it gives a dimple at the corner of each of the eyes, which is much more reminiscent of a sheep. And it also gives a dimple here at the bottom of the chin. So it gives us that sheep face shape much better. And so once you have it where you want it, and it's shaped to the point you want, you're going to knot off a couple of more times so that it's secure. And then you're going to weave in the ends. So mine are a little long, so I'm going to chop them off and then weave in the rest. Alright, so I'll finish weaving these in. It can be a little bit more difficult to weave in ends after shaping the head because of the tension running through the project, but a little persuasion, they'll get in there. Alright, so now we are ready to make the nose. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be cutting out the fleece. So for this we're going to need the fleece cutouts. There will be a link to that in the description of this video. And there's an important note that I make on here. Make sure that the printer is set to print at 100% scale, not fit to page. And the reason why is this morning when I printed these, I actually forgot to check that. And so this one is set to, this one is fit to page, this one is 100%. And you can see that this one has been scaled down to fit on the page better. I've got a much bigger margin here, which makes all of these shapes on the inside smaller than they're supposed to be. So do not do this, do this. Set it at 100% scale. So we need that. We're going to need 2 kinds of scissors. I've got paper scissors and fabric scissors. You're going to need your pins and of course your fleece. So the very first thing we're going to do is take our paper scissors and just cut around the solid line of each of these shapes. And I forgot, another thing you're going to need is a fine tipped marker. Alright, so once you have each of the shapes cut out, we're going to take our fleece and we're going to set the shapes on here and then we're going to pin them in place. So this, you can use honestly like any pattern you want when it comes to fleece. My recommendation is that you get a really high quality fleece and you'll be able to feel that by how thick it is, and often the ones that are high quality are also really soft. So this is a good one to use. I got this at Joann's. If you can only find super thin fleece, a couple of options: you can fold it in half so that you have like a double thickness, or you can do like a backing on it, an iron-on backing that will make it firmer and make it so it doesn't tear. So because this is kind of a different pattern, it's not like a plaid where it's all kind of the same everywhere. I really have to be particular about where I'm going to place and pin these so that I get a look that I want. I might go with that flower for the ears. And then you're just going to take, once you kind of know where you want them to sit, you're going to take your fabric pins and you're just going to pin them into place. So you don't want these moving. And the nose is too hard to pin, so I'm just going to set it there and then I'll cut it out in a second. So I'm just going to move the nose for a second and I'm going to cut out the other shapes. So now taking the fabric scissors, you're just going to cut right along the outside of each shape. So because on these ones I have them placed so as far out, I don't know, I don't want to have to cut a line and ruin like potential spots for other fleece. So I just cut a little snip and I'm gonna try and cut these out without ruining big chunks of fleece. All right, so you're just going to do that with every single shape, and then on the ears and the feet and the arms, you're going to do it one more time. So at the end, we're going to have, you know, 2 of the feet, 2 of the arms, 2 of the ears, and then 1 of the nose. All right, so you've got your front feet, your back feet, the ears, and the little tiny one for the nose. There, now you can see them. And so now what you're going to do is you're going to take your paper scissors again, and you're going to take the shapes other than the nose, and you're going to just cut right along the dotted line on each of them. So you're just going to go right at the edge, making sure not to cut off any of the dashes, but to get as close to them as you can. There, like that. And then what you're going to do is for each of the shapes, I'm just going to move these to the side, you're going to take the shape that it goes with, you know, this one. You're going to flip it on the back side, and then you're just going to place it right on top, centered. And then you're going to just make a tiny little dash where each of the dashes are. Like that. So you're going to do that on every single shape, other than the nose. And then I'm going to pull it in a little closer. Ooh, my fabric and my background kind of match. What you're going to do is you're just going to pinch it. And on each of the dashes, you're just going to cut a tiny little snip, so tiny. So I'm using, I think these are like cuticle scissors or something. These are a beauty product, but they have really sharp tips, and that's what you need, because you just want, like, if you can see that, it you can't even see all the way through that snip, which is perfect. You want it to be really tiny, because the head of the crochet hook going through there will widen it a little bit, and you don't want them to run together. So you just want, I'm seeing, like on that one, I didn't really cut on the dash. I cut a little too far in. I wasn't paying attention. I was talking too much. Yeah, so that's better. So you just want these little tiny snips. And like if you need to, you can go back and widen them a little bit. But I definitely err on the side of
small. Like that one might be too small, I might not. Yeah, there we go. When you give it a gentle tug, you need to like almost be able to see what's behind it. And so you're just going to continue doing this all the way around, and you're going to do this on all of the shapes other than the nose.
So we're going to sew on the nose, and what you're going to need is a sewing needle and thread colored to match your fleece. I'm using a light pink, which is kind of hard to see, so I apologize for that. And then we're going to pin the nose just right onto the tip of the snout in the very last row. And we're going to use our needle and thread, and we're just going to work it underneath a stitch and underneath the edge of the fleece. And before you pull it all the way through, there's going to be kind of a loop created by the knot. And you're just going to insert the needle through that and then pull it tight. And we'll weave these ends in later. But what that does is that secures the knot, and you don't have to worry about it pulling out or like pulling through your fleece as you're working. So you're just going to continue around. And after each stitch, I mean, you don't want to pull it so tight that you warp the shape of the fleece, but if you give it a decent tug, the stitch kind of disappears. The thread disappears a little bit because we're working with, fleece, which is soft and fibrous, and the Bernat blanket yarn is also really soft and textured, and so when you give it a tug, it kind of buries itself into those textures. So there you have it. We've gone all the way around. Now it's just time to knot it off. And I'm just going to bury it into the project, like so. Go ahead and weave those in. I might actually have to get a smaller needle to weave in the first one. I mean the smaller hook. And there you have it. So the next thing we'll be doing is making the ears. So for that, we're going to start with our gray Bernat blanket yarn and our 8mm hook. Very first thing we're going to do is make a magic ring. And then we're going to half double crochet 8. So we're going to wrap the yarn around the hook, insert it into the circle, yarn over, pull through, then yarn over and pull through all 3. So that's 1. We've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I'm going to pull the end tight. And I'm just going to use a little piece of string for a running stitch marker, and we'll begin row 2. So when you take a first glance at it, it looks a little intimidating. We're just going to break it down nice and simple. So the very first thing we're going to do is single crochet, and then we're going to do an increasing stitch. So increase. We'll do that one more time. Single crochet and increase. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a half double crochet. Insert it in, yarn over, pull through all 3. Then we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to do a half double crochet in that same stitch. So essentially it's an increasing half double crochet with a chain 1 in between. Then we're going to increase, 1, 2, then single crochet, and then increase. So for row 3, we're going to be crocheting into the fleece. So for this, we're going to switch hooks. We're going to take out the 8mm hook. We're going to put in the 5.5mm hook. And you want to kind of match the gauge of the 8mm hook, so you're going to be working relatively loosely. Then we're going to take the fleece ear and we're going to put the back side right here against what's going to be like the inside of our ear. And so we're going to make this work a little better, we're going to flip it right side out. So we're going to insert your crochet hook into the next stitch, and then on the ear there's one, this is the base of the ear and this is like the tip of the ear farthest away from the head. And so we're going to insert it into this one right here that's right at the base. And since we made nice and small stitches, it might take or snips, it might take a little persuasion, but that's better than it ripping right through. So then you're just going to yarn over and pull through, yarn over, pull through. So that's a single crochet. Then the next stitch, we're going to do an increase. So we're increasing like that. And the next one, single crochet. And increase. And you're just going to do that all the way around. Once again, you're trying to work this last row loosely so that the gauge matches the gauge with the 8mm hook. before I put this very last stitch in, I'm going to pull out my running stitch marker. I'm going to take this yarn tail and I'm just going to tuck it in there as best I can. There we go. So that's our very last stitch. I'm going to just slip stitch into the next one to finish it off a little bit nicer. Then cut a 6 to 8 inch tail. And tie off. Now something that I like to do is to just kind of shape it with my hands a little bit, because I mean the ear is supposed to sit so that there's this kind of concave spot in the back, and sometimes when you finish it's actually, you know, flipped out this way. So just, you know, take a moment, shape it. You know, depending on how you hold your crocheting, that might have not even been an issue at all. Yeah, so that's what it's going to look like. And then you're going to make a second one, and we'll be ready to attach the ears to the head. All right, so in attaching the ears to the head, we are going to be placing them just right in between the bobble stitch rows here, relatively level with the eye. So they're going to be sticking out. Like so. And it's actually kind of difficult to pin them into place because fabric pins are just not strong enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how I would do this. So I've got, I know where this is supposed to be placed, so I'm just going to hold it here. I'm going to pull the yarn tail from the ear underneath a stitch here. And I'm going to pull it up through kind of the next stitch in the ear. We'll go back down in through here and pull it tight. And I'm going to do that in the next series of stitches. You want to try and get through both so you have a more secure attach. And down through there. And that's really all you need. If you want to, I mean, of course you need to knot it off. But if you want, you can kind of flip the ear toward the front and kind of attach along the back side, just for that extra stability. Kind of depends on the intended recipient of the toy. I know, like, my daughter likes to carry the animals around by their ears, so in that case, like, it's a really good idea to, you know, make sure that it's extra secure. And so once you've gotten to it to where it's very, you know, secure around the front and the back, then you can just go ahead and knot it off. So once you're done that, you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. This ear, the yarn tail is going to be kind of at the base, or at the bottom of the ear, so you'll have to work, you know, attaching it upward. I'm just going to flip it around because that makes it easier for me. But you're going to follow the exact same procedure. So there you are.